Have you ever wondered what it's like to work in law enforcement? Here on Behind the Star, we share stories about the Orange County Sheriff's Office, Central Florida's largest law enforcement agency. From forensics to dispatch to the deputies on patrol, we'll talk to the brave men and women who protect our community. This is Behind the Star, the official podcast of the Orange County Sheriff's Office. Welcome to Behind the Star, the official podcast of the Orange County Sheriff's Office. My name is Jon Busdeker, the official host of the official podcast here at the Orange County Sheriff's Office. My title is also storyteller at the agency. And before we get into today's interview, which I'm super excited about because we are on location, but I want to remind everybody, follow us on Facebook and YouTube and Instagram and Twitter. We've put out some really cool videos this week. One in particular that I will say, is about our large recruiting class. We have the largest recruiting class we've ever had in the history of the Sheriff's Office. More than 45 recruits are going through training right now in the academy out at Valencia College. And I think it turned out really good. So go check that out. See what those men and women have to do to become law enforcement officers, because it's not as easy as you think. So without further ado, I want to introduce Master Deputy Jason Sams. He is a tactical flight officer in the Aviation Section here at the Sheriff's Office. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So, Jason, I first of all, before we started today's podcast, we did a little tour of the Aviation Section. If you're not familiar, they are headquartered here out at the Executive Airport here in Orlando, and they have sort of their own section of the airport, and you gave me a tour. But first of all, why don't you explain what exactly does the Aviation Section do? What's your role here for the Sheriff's Office?
Well, we're not just the guys that walk around in flight suits looking cool.
You do look cool in those flight suits.
But we're actually deputy sheriffs. The difference is we patrol from the air. Our job and our function is really not much different than the deputy on the ground. Our helicopters, to us, are no different than the marked police vehicles driving out there on the streets. It's a response vehicle, and that's what we use it for, is to respond to calls. All the members here, we're all deputy sheriffs. There are two jobs. Tactical flight officer is one job, and we'll go into that further. And pilot is the other job. Both crew members are deputy sheriffs.
Okay. All right. So you're all sworn officers out here.
We are.
Yeah.
We are. Yeah. And we're based out of Orlando Executive Airport, which is perfect because it's central in the county. So we can pretty much be anywhere in the county in just a matter of minutes.
All right, so I like to do this before I get too far. I like to find out how you ended up here at the Sheriff's Office. So tell me, how did you end up here at the Sheriff's Office?
Kind of a long story. Growing up, I grew up with a father who was an Orange County deputy. And for me, that was it. I just had to be an Orange County deputy. There was always an Orange County car in my driveway. I'd see him come home every day with his uniform on and just admired him and his buddies that he worked with and everything. So it was a no-brainer for me. I started my law enforcement career in 1999 as a young 21-year-old reserve deputy here at Orange County. I did that just for a short period of time before I got a full-time job at the city of Edgewood, which is here in Orange County.
Yeah, just south of Orlando.
Yeah, it was only 9 of us, 9 police officers, including the chief. It's kind of like Mayberry, but...
Now they probably have 12 there. No, just kidding.
Yeah. I learned how to be a cop really quick, being the only police officer in the city on the midnight shift.
Oh, okay.
It was me. But I was fortunate enough in 2003 to come back to Orange County full time, where I was a patrol deputy in Sector 4, working midnight shifts in Zone 42, which is the number streets of the South Orange Blossom Trail. And during that time, I would always be supported by the air crews for various calls.
Yeah.
And it was just really cool to have a helicopter above you and you're running with a dog on the ground. And they're seeing things that you can't see, and you don't know how they're finding these people. Did a ride along, and I was hooked. I grew up a aviation nerd. You and I are about the same age. Top Gun was my jam.
Okay, all right. You look like a Top Gun guy right now.
Yeah, Top Gun was my movie, and I always was the kid growing up that if something flew over my head, always looked up, and I still do that to this day. I just always want to see airplanes.
So then how did you get into aviation? You went from a patrol deputy to aviation.
Yeah. So there is a process here just like every other job in the sheriff's office, you need to do at least 2 years in patrol. I did several years in patrol and then transferred to criminal investigations, where I worked almost 10 years in the robbery unit, which was a violent crimes unit. During that time, I felt like aviation was something I was ready to pursue when I was about 12 years into my career. And I became a part-time tactical flight officer. And that's where everybody starts, is part-time.
But you had to learn how to fly a aircraft, though, right?
Well,
at some point?
Not necessarily. In both jobs, the crew members are taught. Obviously, the pilot knows how to fly the aircraft, right? He's licensed to pilot the aircraft. The tactical flight officers, when they come in, if they have no flight experience, you get taught emergency flight procedures. The reason being is we're flying over violent situations, and there has been, that I know of, one case that we've been shot at, but nationwide, people shoot at aircraft.
Oh, yeah.
Could hit the pilot. People laser our aircraft all the time.
Oh, yeah. I've done a video on
Yes.
the laser hitting the aircraft.
And if the pilot is blinded from that laser, somebody's got to fly. If there's a medical emergency and the pilot is unable to fly the aircraft, somebody needs to fly the aircraft. So all flight officers get taught how to operate the aircraft, bring it back to a safe location, land it, and get that pilot help. So everybody gets taught how to fly in-house.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how this all works out here. So I think a lot of people understand how a deputy works. They get called out to a scene, and they go and they drive there, and they talk to whoever called them. How does the aviation unit respond, and when does it respond, and how do you get called out to do patrols, and what you do?
Yeah, so several different ways. But let's just take today for an example. Today I'm on day shift. We do a 2-month rotation. So every 2 months I switch between days and nights.
And it's 24 hours out
24-hour
here.
operation.
You don't close out at 5
Correct.
o'clock.
Correct. And we're running 4 shifts a day. And you're working 12-hour shifts. So there's overlap in crews. So right now there are 2 crews working. So if something is needed in the county, let's say in Pine Hills, where a helicopter is needed, one crew will go to that. And let's say over by UCF something happens, now we have a second crew to be able to respond. So during peak times, we have 2 crews. But today, for instance, I come in, my pilot and we get assigned an aircraft. We pre-flight our aircraft. We want to know that it's safe to operate over the community every day.
Yeah, and there's 3 helicopters, is that right?
3 helicopters. They all go by the call sign Chase, and then it's Chase 1, 2, and 3.
And what's the difference between the 3?
Well, Chase 1 and Chase 2 are Bell 407s, and Chase 3 is a Bell 206 L4.
All right, for somebody who has no idea what that means, what's the difference?
So if we were going down to CarMax and we were shopping for cars, Chase 3, which is the 206 L4, would be a Volkswagen Jetta.
All right, not a bad car.
Right. Reliable.
Yeah.
It'll get you from point A to point B. Does the job. Chase 1 and 2 would be the Porsche 911 or the Hot Rod.
All right, that's the one you want.
Yeah.
That's the one you want to get assigned to.
They're just the difference is they're faster and they have more capability to carry a larger load.
All right, and more people can fit in the other 2 than the one.
Right, but on our daily mission, it's just myself and a pilot. So Chase 3 is nothing for us. But if we had a SWAT operation, then we would get in Chase 1, Chase 2.
Okay, all right. So back to why you get called out. Like, what are some of the reasons you get called out to go up into the air?
So when we give tours here, we give tours here all the time. And I tell the public who comes here, if a dog responds, we respond. That's typically it. So,
okay.
So
a canine.
A canine, yeah. So almost all your violent felonies, canine will respond to all felonies, so we will respond too. So those are going to be armed robberies, grand thefts, stolen vehicles, shootings, murders, all your violent crimes we're going to go out to. We also respond to missing people. We provide services to the fire department for fire overwatch or brush fire reconnaissance.
Okay.
So it's not just the sheriff's office we fly for. We fly for every police department in Orange County and every fire department and whatever the county government might need from a helicopter.
I'll get into that. I want to go back real quick though. So why do you fly out to these felonies? Is it just so we have somebody up above in case something else is going on? Because I imagine like, well, maybe the crime's already been committed, it's over, but maybe it's still in the process. Is that why you're up there?
So deputies, when they're responding to a crime in progress and a suspect is on foot or they've located the vehicle, they're going to set up a perimeter.
Okay.
And they're going to try to contain that suspect from leaving their perimeter, okay, in the hopes of apprehending that person. And
this happens every now. I mean, it happens a lot, but I know I can think of one case when I've only worked at the sheriff's office 7 or 8 months now, and there was something that happened out in East Orange County where somebody had stolen a car in Brevard. And I think they were sort of bringing it towards Orange, and they had a perimeter. And I think you guys were up there. I'm pretty sure you were. It seems like it'd be a case where you would be up there.
Well, we fly multiple times a day.
Okay.
It is not unusual for us to be flying nearly all the time.
Okay.
But when the deputies set their perimeter, and we believe a suspect's contained in there, a K-9 is going to respond. We are responding also. Our primary job is the safety of the deputies on the ground first.
Okay.
I have equipment on the aircraft that gives me the capability to see in the darkness. I have the ability to see from overhead, which is a much broader view than what you can see on the ground because you have buildings and trees obstructing you.
Yeah.
I can cover that perimeter in that aircraft to the equivalent of 20 deputies making a perimeter.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm constantly doing an orbit over the scene or the area, and I'm constantly looking for the suspect. When K-9 arrives on scene, my duties are to provide K-9 with cover. So I am looking out ahead of K-9 to make sure that they don't run upon a threat.
Yeah.
So we actually play a little cat and mouse game with the dogs, who can find them first.
Yeah, and we should mention, I mean, you're in constant contact with the deputies on the ground, because I've seen the video, I've heard the sort of exchange. You know, we have them up here, we got them down here, and so it's not like you're just flying up there sort of like in a vacuum. Like, you know what's happening, and they're wanting to talk to you as well.
Right. So the tactical flight officer and the pilot, we're listening to 6 things at one time.
Okay.
So we have helmets on, which makes us look like Maverick and Goose.
Yeah.
But coming through our intercom system or our headsets is 6 radios. We have 2 aviation channels that are talking, air traffic controllers and other aviation frequencies that are talking.
Yeah.
The dispatch channel that we're working on is talking.
Yeah, which we've been to the comm center for the podcast.
Correct.
If you missed that one, that's what they do. They talk to deputies, and they talk to you guys in the air.
There's a county-wide emergency channel that broadcasts all emergencies on it. That could be going off the same time. And then another channel that each dispatch center talks to each other. So you could have 6 things going into your ears at one time, and communication between you and the pilot while you're trying to talk to people on the ground.
It seems like a lot going on. Well, plus you're in a plane or in a helicopter that's, you know,
constantly moving.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So let's say let's say there's a crime that occurred somewhere in Orange County and you get called out. How long before the call to when you're up in the air? How long does it take to sort of get the thing out there and get it up in the air?
So the aircraft is already pre-flighted for flight.
Okay, so it's ready to go.
It's ready to go. Gassed up, ready to go. All we have to do is pull it out, point it into the wind, load up. So it takes us about a minute and a half to get our gear on.
Okay.
We're deputy sheriffs. We have to have certain gear that go with us.
Yeah, ready to go.
And get in the aircraft, get strapped in, and then there's a required startup procedure that has to be conducted. So that could be between 2 to 3 minutes. And then we lift off, but we just can't leave the airport. We have to get permission to leave the airport because this airport is controlled. There's a tower and there's airplanes constantly on a traffic pattern in here coming into land, take off, that sort of thing. So we just can't bust out. So we have to get permission to leave.
Do you get precedent, though? I mean, if there's an emergency, do you get first sort of dibs at taking off?
Well, it's interesting because the tower hears us more than anybody else.
Are you yelling at them? Or
no,
they just...
we're busy.
Yeah.
So they always hear Chase on their frequency. So they know us. And they They've told us that they can tell by the reflection of our voice how important it is.
Oh, okay.
But there's been times that we had to get going and we can say, Tower Chase, we need an expedient departure. And they know that we need to get out of here.
Yeah.
And we don't use that all the time. We don't need to. But yeah, they'll give us precedence if we have to have it.
What's the most common reason that you have to go up in the air in a helicopter?
Well, it depends on the shift. So, for instance, day shift, your most common reasons are going to be burglaries and stolen cars.
Okay.
For example, today, my first flight of the day was a burglary call in Meadowwoods. So we flew on that. My other flight was in between that flight, I had a murder suspect that we were trying to apprehend. Came back, landed. We had a stolen car. And we had an armed robber that was in a hotel.
Oh, wow.
So that was just
today
before lunch.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So depending on your shift will be the different types of calls. On the midnight shift, you get a lot of car burglars in overnight burglaries that you respond to.
Yeah.
And then you get your 9 times out of 10, your pursuits are going to be happening at night because there's less people on the road and it's easier to find a bad guy. So you like last night, they responded to a pursuit and assisted in that. So it just kind of depends on the shift that you're on and what the mood of the day is.
And you have those really cool cameras on the helicopters where you can kind of see at night. And tell me about that.
Yeah. So each aircraft has a L3 Westcam MX-10 is the technical name for it. But basically, if you watch the news and you see Chopper Dan of Channel 2 broadcasting a car crash, he's got a daytime camera on his helicopter. I have that too.
Okay.
Mine just has a longer range and some more tricks. But at night, the daytime camera does you no good.
Yeah.
Because you can't see anything. So we use an infrared camera.
Okay. And when you see that, it's usually black and white and you can kind of see the heat of somebody down below.
Yeah. And years ago, we would have to really explain the science behind that. But these days we don't because of games like Call of Duty, which has an infrared camera in it. And people know black is cold and white is hot.
That's like Predator. If you ever seen the movie Predator,
exactly,
it's like that.
Exactly. But there are, I don't remember the number, but there's several hundred shades of gray in between, and that is your amount of heat. But everything in the world, no matter what it is, emits an infrared heat signature. And so it could be a leaf or it could be a person. It emits an infrared heat, and that camera paints a picture of that.
So you said how many people work out here roughly?
Top of my head, 24, 25.
Now, do most people end up here? Were they maybe in the military and came over here to work, or did they learn to fly while they were at the sheriff's office? Like what's the typical path here?
I did both. In the 80s and 90s, a lot of people were military because you had the Vietnam era guys.
Okay.
And now where we are today, there are, just top of my head, I think 2 military aviators. And everyone else either has some sort of private aviation experience or none at all who came over.
How long are you usually up in the air for?
It depends. Each aircraft is depending on where we're out in the county because we always we can fly 2.5 hours.
Okay.
But we have to consider we have to come back and get gas.
Yeah.
So we might not be able to stay on scene for 2.5 hours because we may be 30 minutes away from the airport.
Okay. All right.
But roughly 2.5 hours. And a lot of times you're busy to where you come in and get gas while still, we call it hot fueling. The aircraft's still running. The pilot stays in the aircraft. TFO gets out, hot fuels it, and you go right back out.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, you just come back for the gas and go right back to the place.
Yeah,
and I assume sometimes you're up in the air and you get called to another scene. You're like, well, we can't go back to the airport. We gotta go to this one.
Well, ironically, when we are airborne and we've finished a call, most supervisors in the county know that we're airborne and they start calling us.
They're like, well, if you're up there, you might as well go check on this thing real quick.
And we tried to stay airborne too, because our apprehension rate, if we're airborne, goes up dramatically.
Really?
Because we can get to the scene so quick, opposed to having to respond from here, that whole 8-minute delay of even getting airborne. Now you're behind the 8 ball.
Okay.
Deputies do a really good job on the ground of containing the suspect, but they may not have got there quick enough, or he was elusive enough to get out, and now you're behind the curve. If we're airborne, our apprehension rate is, I can't even give you an exact number, but I would say goes up 80%.
All right, so let's say I wanted to go buy a helicopter. Where does one purchase a helicopter at?
Well, you would have to contact the manufacturer and go straight through them. It'd be like calling Ford and dealing with them strictly. So we fly Bell helicopters. That's what our entire fleet is. So we go through Bell to purchase an aircraft.
But I mean, do you just like go to the dealership and pick it out, or go to the factory and pick it out, or how does that work?
So you get assigned a rep from Bell, who then meets with you and goes through the pre-build process. When the helicopter manufacturers are producing a helicopter, they run a production line, and they can only run that certain model for a certain period of time, and then they have to move to another model. So you get on a list, usually a year or two out, to purchase a helicopter.
So what's a helicopter cost? If I wanted to go buy one today?
So it's ever changing. The last number I heard is over $5 million. So,
okay, all right, they're pretty pricey. I'm probably not going to go out and buy one.
But the interesting thing is, take for instance a police car out on the streets that the sheriff buys. We usually get 5 to 6 years out of that car before it becomes high mileage and you can't drive it anymore.
Yeah.
And we sell it off at auction for whatever. Helicopters and airplanes are built so well that we just in general aviation flies for 30 plus years.
Oh, wow.
So it may be a large investment from the beginning, but over time, considering what you're paying for and what you're getting, it's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, and you had told me while we were doing the tour that some of the previous helicopters were former military helicopters, and this was a normal practice for a long time.
Yeah, for a very long time, public aviation, law enforcement aviation was flying military surplus. You could get them really cheap. They were super high hours. You'd pretty much have to rebuild them and put all new components in them, but it was extremely inexpensive. And several years ago, that program had ended, and we're flying commercial aircraft right now. So, which is good. I mean, we've got air conditioning now. Military doesn't buy air conditioning.
Oh, really?
And you're flying lower timed aircraft opposed to really high time aircraft that the military abuses.
Okay. All right. So we touched on this a little bit earlier about lasers. And so I said that I had done a video not too long ago sort of pointing out the dangers of lasers. Maybe I can have you explain this, because I saw some comments at some point during when I posted this video, or when we said, don't point lasers at helicopters. People had said, well, what's the big deal? It's, they're not going to get blinded, but that's not true. That happens.
It's completely not true. We get, I don't even know the number, but it's probably weekly that we get a call of a aircraft coming into Orlando International that got struck by a laser. Weekly.
And I should say it is a felony.
It is a felony.
And you will get arrested,
right,
and you will go to jail for this.
But do you know why they call us?
No.
Because we go up as bait.
Oh, really?
So, we want to apprehend that person.
Okay.
Okay.
And you have the night vision and all that too, where you can get, or the heat seeking, you can go see where they are.
If we know where it came from.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but I've been struck by a laser on 4 different occasions, and you're right. The common person may think they just point a laser at their wall and they're like, it's not that bright and my cat chases it. That's no big deal. But when that thing has traveled over a mile and is expanded and hasn't lost any of its illumination.
Yeah.
It is extremely bright in the aircraft. Matter of fact, I had a headache for 3 days, and I didn't even get direct hit. So when that laser enters a window of an aircraft, there's a lot of screens and monitors that laser is bouncing off of and hits you in your retina. You're going to have temporary blindness, if not permanent damage.
Yeah, it's dangerous.
It's
that's the bottom line. It's very, very, very dangerous. So, all right, well, we got that out of the way. So when I came out here and I first looked at your sort of operation, it was a little bit different, because I've been to some of the different sectors and I've seen how they're sort of set up. This one, and you made the comment, is sort of set up like a firehouse, because you live here. You live here part-time, right?
We do. We're a 24-hour operation. I work a 12-hour shift. I'm responsible for the calls in my 12 hours. So, it's not easy to leave to go down to Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
So everybody brings their food here. We have a full kitchen, and we have a crew area that we sit and can watch TV or whatever. But every hour of the day, we're monitoring the radio. We're monitoring special channels that maybe something's occurring on that they want us to listen to.
Yeah.
We're staying up to date on our dispatch systems on our computers, so we're always in the flow. But yeah, it's like walking into a fire station. It's a little different. I've never had that because I've always been in a police car out on the streets, or a detective and working out of central operations and then going out to the streets. Here, I come here, and the only time I go out to the streets is when I drive back home.
Yeah.
I fly over the streets.
So tell me again, how long have you worked here at the Aviation Section? How many years?
I came full-time part-time in 2012, and I stayed as a detective in robbery during that time, and I came full-time in 2015.
Okay, so not super long.
No.
I mean, 3-4 years or so.
No.
Out of those 3-4 years, are there any particular cases or anything that you sort of point to and say, well, like this is why I'm proud to do what I do?
Oh, man. You should have prepped me for that one.
Well, if I prep you, you think about it too long. I don't know. Maybe there was some time you were up in the air and you guys found somebody or spotted somebody and you really sort of made a big difference in a case.
Well, this may not even be crime related, but this just kind of goes into how the aviation unit is so broad. We were here one day. It was a Saturday, and I look out the window and I see the airport fire trucks on the runways. So something's happening, right?
Yeah.
So I called the tower, and they said that there was an aircraft that couldn't get its landing gear down. And they asked us to respond to that aircraft to see if we can assist him with getting the landing gear down. Now, I'm not going to climb out of my aircraft, jump on his wing.
Well, if you were Top Gun, you would, but I'm just kidding.
But we responded, and we caught up to him over the Apopka area at several thousand feet. And with use of our camera system, I was able to confirm to him that he had one gear stuck. We helped him walk through procedures that all pilots are trained to try to get that gear to come down. And eventually, the gear wouldn't come down, and he knew he was going to have to land. He was 70-something years old.
Okay, wow.
And he decided, well, I'm going to have to land this like a tricycle on 2 wheels instead of 3. So we followed him in. We stayed close to him. We stayed in communication with him the entire time. And he came in on final over the runway, and he's flying the aircraft while I'm talking him to the ground by giving him feet. I'm like, you're 10 feet, 6 feet, 3 feet. He landed it on 2 wheels, and finally it rested on the side without the wheel, turned off the runway. We sat down with the fire trucks, and he was totally fine.
Oh, wow.
And he came here a couple of days later with his grandkids and his wife and his son and daughter, and thanked us. And so that was kind of unique.
You had mentioned missing persons. You do a lot of that as well. You go looking for people that are reported missing.
We do. Actually, they found one last night. There was I don't know the details, but there was a missing hiker. He and his dog, they were lost, and
really?
they located them.
And it's fun. I want you to explain that story, but it's interesting because when you think about Orange County, you think, oh, all right, it's Disney's here, and when you got downtown Orlando, it's all urban, but there's a lot of really rural places in Orange County.
A lot. You go up to the Wekiva Wildlife Preserve up there. It's monstrous. We were just up there earlier on a call. Or last week, we got called to a missing hiker.
Yeah.
In the Tochahatchee, which is out by the St. Johns River.
Okay, East Orange County.
Yeah, huge wildlife management system. And so we would respond out. I wasn't part of this particular one, but not too long ago, flight crews get called to a missing boater or an overturned boater or something in the St. Johns River.
Okay.
So we fly with night vision goggles at night.
And this was at night, the
yes.
boat over home.
Right.
Man, I would not want to be there at night overturned.
Yeah. And when you get out to the St. Johns River area, it's complete darkness. You can't see the horizon, so you don't know when you're flying. The horizon's important.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. So we're flying on night vision goggles, and the flight crew relays to the dispatcher who's on the phone with this guy. Does he have a cell phone or a lighter or anything that he can use to signal us?
Yeah, just not a laser.
Just not, yeah. No. So if you know where the St. Johns River is, and you know for where about Avalon Park is,
Yeah.
it's several probably 10 miles away.
Yeah.
The guy lit a Bic lighter in the darkness, and on night vision goggles, they saw it.
Wow.
That's how sensitive they are.
Wow.
And they were able to direct cruise in.
And they got him, and he was
Yep.
safe and okay, and
Yep.
that's amazing.
But we find missing kids all the time who wander off or have special needs, and they just wander away from home. We
Yeah.
find them, or elderly people.
And you say that, and you think about, oh, like I never hear about this stuff on the news or whatever. It's because at that point, you found them, it's a safe ending, and you might not hear about this. And I've learned this a lot just working at the sheriff's office. There's just so many things that happen on a daily basis that just, it's not really news, but it's still really important to somebody. And you did something, and you probably saved somebody's life, and you just don't hear about it all the time.
Yeah. Just take car pursuits, for example. We are constantly saving the lives of people at every intersection when a vehicle pursuit is occurring with use of a helicopter, because we can see out ahead of that car that's fleeing, and we can get pre-warning to the deputies on the ground, and they can set up at intersections and shut them down to keep the traveling public from going through when a car's coming at 100 miles an hour with no headlights on.
Yeah, because I imagine on the ground, you don't know if the person's going to turn left, turn right, go through. But from above, you can kind of probably tell, all right, this is where they're likely headed.
Right. But just thinking about it on some cases.
Back to that hiker. That hiker was okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. I didn't want to leave everybody hanging there.
Yes,
yeah, he's all right.
Yeah. They were briefing me on it this morning when I relieved them. But my pilot, Bill Snar, he's retired now, and we were flying. We were doing patrol. So we use we fly these aircraft in a patrol mission. So, for instance, let's say you live out in Waterford Lakes, and you've got a string of car burglaries at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
We get made aware of that here. And so if we're up and we finish a call, we'll go patrol that area, and we'll look for any suspicious people walking around at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
And we've got the best resources on the ground in green, and we call them, and they come and make contact with them for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we do that very often. Well, in one case, we just finished a call, and a series of armed robberies went out in the South Sector 4 area, Oak Ridge Road.
Okay.
And they had been occurring throughout the night. Same car, same suspect descriptions, and several hours have gone by, and several more robberies have occurred. So we were like, let's go down that way. And as we're heading that way, a armed robbery goes out. Same car description, same bad guy description, same MO. And we're coming up to like Millennium Mall. And it's early in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. There's one car coming down Millennium Boulevard. So I take the camera, point it at it, and I'm like, oh, that's a Kia SUV. That's what we were looking for.
That's the car.
And I asked my pilot, because I'm looking on an infrared camera, I said, look out, what color's that car? He said blue or whatever it was. That's what we were looking for. The windows are down. I could see there was 3 people in the car. We were looking for 3 people. So put 2 and 2 together. This could be the car.
Yeah.
Called deputies on the ground. They caught up to it. As soon as they got behind it, what do you think it did?
Took off.
A pursuit happened. The pursuit ended in the Pine Hills area. 3 people got out of the car, ran all different directions, and with 2 K9 teams and a helicopter, we apprehended all 3 within 45 seconds.
Wow.
And closed out 6 cases.
Yeah, and there's I don't want to say there's no way that could have happened without a helicopter, but I assume it would be very difficult.
Yeah. Very.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
But these guys, I can bring these guys in here, and they can tell you story after story after story of how the helicopter has been used, from apprehending the most violent person in Orange County to saving the most innocent life.
Yeah. You just never know.
Yeah.
You never know what you're going to get called
don't.
out to. Is there anywhere you can't fly in Orange County?
No. There is a temporary flight restriction over the Disney area.
Okay.
That's public. Everybody knows that there's one. But we can enter it on law enforcement missions.
Okay. So if there's a reason to go over there.
Right.
You can go over there.
Right. And which we do. We go patrol that area because there are hundreds of thousands of tourists over there.
Yeah.
And we go patrol.
Yeah.
So we do get kind of the coolest views of the Magic Kingdom and Epcot, for sure.
Well, maybe when I come take a ride, maybe
We'll
we can
definitely take
swing out that way.
We'll definitely.
What's your favorite part about this job? What do you like the best?
I've done a lot of jobs in the sheriff's office, and to this job and sitting in an interview room with a violent felon to get him to confess to something was the most thrilling part.
Okay.
But this job really tests you mentally and physically, because you have to be able to do 10 different tasks at one time. You're doing a job. You're trained as a deputy sheriff, but you have to learn how to be an aviator too.
Yeah.
So you're mixing the two together that weren't supposed to be together. So, and there's just no better way to chase somebody than with a helicopter.
I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to end it. But thank you, Master Deputy Sam. So thanks for being on Behind the Star. And thank you for the opportunity to go on a flight soon. I will take you up on that definitely. And thank you all for listening to Behind the Star. And we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to Behind the Star. You can find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Also, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Until next time, I'm Jon Busdeker, and this is Behind the Star.